Hi, I'm Jim Hammond, custom knife maker from Arab, Alabama. Been a full-time knife maker since 1977. Member of the Knife Makers Guild since 1978 and state director. Been a production knife designer since 1994, the first custom maker selected by Columbia River Knife and Tool in Tualatin, Oregon. With me today, it's an honor to have retired Master Sergeant Arcenio Advincula from Oceanside, California. Jim is a renowned martial artist, having been in the martial arts now for over 65 years. He's a member of the Black Belt Hall of Fame. He is a former drill instructor, having served 3 tours in Vietnam, and is Black Belt Emeritus from the United States Marine Corps, and also was the Marine who was instrumental in creating the martial arts training program for the United States Marine Corps. Jim, it's glad to have you with us this morning. We're going to be reviewing the Flesheater series, Flesheater 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And I'm going to have Jim go over these. We first began the design work on the Flesheater 20 years ago, back in the early 90s. One of his students came to and asked him about embodying a knife design that collectively combined his training expertise and put it together not as a utility knife per se, but as a utility fighter, primarily as a combat knife for those who in our military forces are the tip of the spear. And I would like Jim to go over first on the large Flesheater, the 9-inch bladed version, let him share with you the reasons behind all the design elements which go into this particular knife. Jim?
Okay. Again, I was asked to design a knife that was primarily a combat knife, something that I would want to use in combat, and this is what we've come up with. There was many unique features of the knife that to many people look odd and a little bit weird, but there's actually a reason for everything on this knife. Number one is there are 4 primary grips, and the thing is you don't, as a rule, change your grip in an actual combat situation. The thing is, for different purposes and reasons, we can change the grip. The primary grip, and the reason for this design of the knife, was a natural feel. Most knives, you turn the angle of your hand too straight like this, like a straight hammer. Today we now understand that there are some hammers and hatchets where the handle is actually bent at an angle to have a more natural feel. And this is exactly what we've done with this knife here. The primary grip is held toward the rear. Since I'm a martial artist, one of the styles that I learned was called largo mano. And largo mano means long reach, long hand. Literally long hand, meaning long reach. And so the primary grip was here toward the end. And so we hold on to the knife in this position here. There's a palm groove, and that fits the palm exactly. If we look at it, you can just look at the hand right here, how the palm fits in here. That keeps the hand from sliding. Another thing is we have 2 finger grooves. The finger grooves are important. I call it the pinch point. In other words, when your palm groove, when you push your hand in the palm and you pull on the 2 fingers, you're actually squeezing primary muscles that hold and lock the knife in place. That's very important in a combat situation. The finger grooves and the palm serration here holds the knife, and it keeps them from slipping and sliding under combat conditions. If you're in mud or anything else like this, your hand can move and slip and slide. So this keeps it locked in place. So this is a natural. If you notice the hand is in a natural position. This is also due to martial arts training in karate. In karate, most systems will use a twist punch. In here, in one of the styles I study is Ishinryu karate. In Ishinryu karate, we use a vertical punch, which is more natural in movement. Again, most people don't accept this, but it is one of the most natural positions there is. And if you notice, the knife, vertical punch, and this are very similar. The strength of this type of a fist, or the holding like this, is triple or double your strength in holding or in keeping the wrist from bending. This is the same thing that happens when we're holding the knife like here. So this is our primary grip. It's more natural. Pinch point keeps it from moving, sliding. The second grip is a forward grip. In combat, we might have to use the knife in close action fighting. In that case here, the knife is held in what we call a hammer grip. Hammer grip is the strongest type of grip that we can use with a hatchet, with a machete, and this is what we have here. But this is for close-in fighting, which might happen. For removal of sentry, silent removal of sentry and all this type of grip or infighting we'd use. There's a third grip. Third grip goes toward the front. In combat, you would never use something like this because you're leaving the finger exposed. The thing is, this would be used for intricate work. In other words, again, against a sentry, taking a sentry from the rear. And so this grip gives us one of the strongest. It is also used for utility. Utility, in other words, if we work as a camp knife, when we're around the camp, in the field or anything like this, we can use it here. A fourth grip is toward the rear. We have two finger grips here. So if we grab from the longest reach, we now have a good chopping weapon. It brings the weight of the weapon forward, and so it extends it, and now it becomes an outstanding chopping weapon like this. It can also be used in combat if we need an additional reach, because an opponent might have a longer weapon than this. And even though it is I'm holding it at the rear, this is almost impossible to disarm you, simply because of the finger grip. The two finger grips were primary made. Why there's two? Number one is, in an actual encounter, we might injure one of the fingers, and so we have a reserve. Another thing is that when we're holding this here, most grips are too large. There's too much of the handle being used. In this here, the way that we're holding this, we have full extension. This is the longest grip that we can use. There's no wasted handle. If we look at the knife like this position here, there's no wasted use of the handle here. Another type of use of the weapon is reinforce. Here, when we're holding it in what we call a largo mano, long-range position, which is the ideal position, fighting from a distance, we can put our thumb is on the back of the handle. Our hand pushes back here and we can reinforce a blow. This is again, if we're in infighting or something like this, so we're using two hands against one. And so the thing is, there's no way that my hand can slide simply because my thumb is on the back of the handle in this position here. Now we'll demonstrate some of the different moves. It was not, now here's one thing, this was not designed for a reverse grip. The thing is, it can be used as a reverse grip, but it was not designed as a reverse grip. Most people that do not like the knife do not like it because you cannot hold it. But as you can see, you can use it in a reverse grip if you wanted to. But we'll go through that later on, why we don't prefer the reverse grip. Again, largo mano means long distance, long hand. Long hand meaning long range. So we don't choke up as a rule on the weapon unless it's infighting or something like this. Now we'll demonstrate some of the techniques and the movements of the knife. When we're looking at it like here from the front, the natural position of the knife, the palm, you can see that the palm fits exactly as you're putting right here. The palm of the knife, or the handle of the knife fits right in the palm. The pinch point, we have two fingers right here. This finger comes down here. This is called a fencer's grip, and it can be used as a fencer's grip. The thing is, when you're using it like this under adverse conditions, especially in grappling or anything like this, it is easier to disarm a person that is using the finger in the fencer's grip. So what we do is we use what is called a hammer grip. Hammer grip is just like we use a hammer. It's the strongest type of grip. And the thing is, we put the thumb to the side. Just like we would have the fencer's grip, we just throw it to the side here. Now one thing unique about this handle is, the handle is small toward the rear, as we can see. It fits all the way to the end. There are several purposes of this. If I can have my assistant come here. If you're holding any knife and you leave part of the butt out and he blocks, he can disarm the knife in this position here. When I'm holding it all the way to the rear, in this manner here, if he tries the same technique, the knife rolls off because of the roundness of the butt of the handle. When he pushes it, in fact, all he does, he cannot grab it, doesn't snag, and then the blade just comes around. Again, if I hold it up, choking up, and this is how most people would hold the knife, he can disarm me very easy. Again, the handle is round, your hand is held to the rear. If he tries the same technique and he brings it around, does not work. So this is the largo mano reach. This is exactly what we use. In other words, we hold the hand toward the rear. We were talking about for infighting in this. As I bring the knife back, if somebody moves in, the knife moves and it fits right into the palm, it closes up. In other words, I'm infighting. I don't want to hold it at infighting at this range because now the blade is closer to him, he might be able to disarm me. When I hold it to the rear now, it comes back a couple more inches, and now it's in a what? Immediately for close range fighting. I'm not worried about him now catching the back of the hand because we're now at very close range. If I came out and left my hand at close range, now he would be able to snag the butt of the knife. So again, at close range, here he has no chance of catching it. But when I use it largo mano at long range, if he does attempt to take and disarm it, it won't work. Now, we'll just show you the difference when he's holding. If he's holding it with a fencer's grip, this is a straight handled knife in this position here. This is the weakness of what we call the fencer's grip, especially when we have a larger handle here. We can look at his thumb and you can see how the thumb is exposed here. If I do this, as you see, it pushes away from his thumb, even if he hangs on tightly. The knife just easily comes out. If we go the other way, it's the same thing. You can see, watch how his fingers open up here. But now, even if we hold it with a fencer's grip using this type of a knife, we have a hard rubber knife that is made with the Flesheater style here. Again, if he's holding it with a fencer's grip, and this is an option that we can use with this, but it's because of the design of this. If I try and push to break away from the thumb, it is very hard to move simply because he has what? He has the three fingers on the rear are actually holding it. This is what I call the pinch point. It's very hard, even with the thumb extended, even with a large handle, it is very hard to move it. Either way, simply because those three fingers are locked with the finger groove on the bottom. Again, if we try the other knife, the same hilt, he's holding it exactly the same. It breaks easily. And this is why this handle is designed the way that it is. Again, watch how his palm is fitting right in the groove. When he puts the thumb to the side or to the front, it doubles the strength of the blade. In other words, he has a very strong grip simply because of the design of the handle. And this is one of the things that we teach, or that we use here. Now, the other one, we're putting here, I'm showing you here. We have one, this is largo mano, in other words, from a long range. This is exactly what I want. I want to use as much reach as possible. Close range, as I move in, I'm now holding it what we call like a hammer grip. Again, this is not preferred because if he does grab it, but at infighting, the odds of him grabbing the butt of the knife is very hard for him to do. And so at close range, this is what I do. For intricate work, again, this is our forward grip. This is not from long distance. I wouldn't want to do this because I would be able to, or somebody might hit and cut the finger off because it's exposed. But it gives more In this case, this is where I'm real close. In other words, for rear sentry taking or something like this. In other words, now, since there's no danger of him hitting or blocking, I would use a knife in this manner, like this. So this is actually, again, this is a combat. It is a combat as we started at the beginning. The parameters was, what would you want in combat? This is what I would want in combat. Again, we're now talking about the fourth grip, the extended. Again, if somebody has a longer weapon, if somebody has, just in case he has it, by holding it on here at the rear, this gives me, he has longer reach. Right here, we can see right away that he has longer reach. But as I hold and extend this here to neutralize him, just by holding it toward the rear, that extends my grip, as we can see here. I now have an extra 1.5 to 2 inches by holding it here. And this actually makes an outstanding chopping weapon. It puts the weight of the blade to the front. Since I have a finger groove, the odds of me losing it is very rare. Now, we'll just say, can he disarm me like this? And I'm holding it with one finger now. If he tries to do this and he moves and he tries to push, it's very hard, as we can see. No matter how big he is or anything like this, my hand at the rear, I'm holding it primary with now 2 fingers, with 3 fingers instead of 4. But because of the grip, the palm, pushing against the palm, it's an outstanding watch when he tries to remove it. It becomes very hard, I don't care. But now, to give you an example, if I did it with this knife, and I'm holding it toward the rear now, with the same 3 fingers, and he does the same. Ah! So this is a superior simply because of the design, the finger grip, and everything else. Even though I'm holding it with only basically 3 fingers, it's almost impossible to disarm somebody like this. So again, for extreme use, for longer range, I can use it holding it just with 3 fingers. Same thing like I do here. Now it gives me extended. It also gives me more reach if I have to hack in this manner here, which is some of the techniques that we use in largo mano, long range escrima. But again, if he moves in on me, when I move the knife, it just fits in the palm of the hand for infighting. So that this manner here, this is long range, what we said at the longest range. Notice my blade is now where he can hit it or block it, in this manner here. But as soon as I bring it back like here, my knife comes back, it's now harder for him to block my weapon. And then it's open for attack, whatever the heck. Now there are certain techniques. Most knives, the angle of the guard is in this position here. This is unique that it goes back. There's actually a purpose why the guard goes back and doesn't go forward. Number one is, as you can see, this space isn't even being used on the knife. So in theory, we don't need that. So actually, if the blade was all the way back here, that would be okay. But you see here, I'm using maximum reach of the blade. This is what I'm doing. So I'm holding it here. But now you notice the guard goes back. The purpose of this is if he hits and I block, it's actually not a block, it's a deflecting. In other words, when he hits, it knocks his blade off to the side where mine continues. But we'll just reverse it, where the guard goes up. If we did the same technique, it would actually lock. I don't want it to lock. Since this is a thrusting weapon, I want it to what? To glance off, so that my knife will go forward. Now you notice the lower guard is going forward. There's a reason for this, because now if I block, that is to lock, so I can move his knife. That's exactly what it's for. So now I can what? I can push his knife off to the side, actually use it as a blocking tool. In this case here, you notice that it's gouging. That's intentional, so that now I can dig in. In other words, if I block down, and I can force his what? I can knock his hand to the side. That's intentional. In other words, the guard is made so that I I don't want it to deflect it, I want to lock it. I want to be able to catch, push down, you see here? I want to be able to control with the lower part of the guard. So it's actually digging in. It also, again, if he's attacking, it's to block it. And then when I block it, I deflect, I move it, and then but again, the upper part is made so that if I hit, just in that manner, his knife is deflected. My knife goes straight. That is intentional. Since this is also a thrusting knife, matter of fact, this is the primary. It's like in fencing. In fencing, we just use very dexterous moves here. If he attacks here, this one here will chop here. If he attacks here, you see, same thing. This here. Again, if I block and I gouge. This way I can move this weapon where I want to. Again, using it as deflecting, this here pushes the knife off. As he comes down, this knocks his knife off so that I can control the issue. So the blade, if we look at the handle, if we look at the point, the angle comes this way, comes back, not forward. That is intentional. When we're talking about reinforcing, in infighting, sometimes somebody will move in and then I'm using here. In other words, I'm using two hands. This is infighting. So in this case here, the thumb is actually locking at the back of the guard. And now I can force here. Again, at this type, it's hard for me to control and really get a good cut. So in this case, I would just reinforce and then just drive. Two hands against one. And then the hand is over here, the thumb, and then the knife can be pushed in. This is using and reinforce. If we look at samurai, the samurai uses this. Many different countries use this, a reinforcing hand. Again, this was made for infighting, for reinforcing. Two hands against one, at close range. So there are many techniques. This knife, again, it was not made for a reverse grip. The thing is, it can be used as a reverse grip. And the good thing about this now, when I'm using a reverse grip, if I want to use it, and if I want to thrust, the bad thing about a reverse grip, it's hard. Now watch, if he tries to disarm me, it's very easy for him to disarm me. Now let's do the same thing with the Flesheater. We're doing this. Now notice that I have the little finger is now holding the finger groove. So when he does the same technique, he's doing the same. It's very hard for him to disarm me, simply because I have a pinch point. I now have, you notice the guard. The palm is now fitting in the palm hold. The little finger is holding on to the forward guard. When he does this, no matter what strength he is, pull. And the reason for the strength of it in a reverse grip is simply because of the pinch, what I call the pinch point. The little finger is pushing and locking against the thumb. And that in itself gives you tremendous strength. If we use the same thing with this, now he does the same thing with this, you have tremendous leverage. So even in a reverse grip, something like this, if I try and thrust or anything like this and he catches me, it's very hard for him to what? To disarm me. If I use this, since it has no finger, I'm not using the finger. When he does this, he can control me. And that's, again, it was not designed for a reverse grip, but the thing will work exactly in an outstanding fashion. In other words, we can still use it. And that's simply because of the what? The finger and the palm hold. This knife was not made for a reverse grip, but it has an outstanding method for a reverse grip. The curvature of it keeps it from hitting the side of the arm. When we're using this way here, this is easy to hold, and this is why some people actually like the reverse grip. But the thing is, that is actually a fault. In this method here, the knife doesn't go against. You see, it's harder to hold it simply because of the curve of the handle. But that is actually a plus, because now when he's catching or anything, or if I want to do this, the knife is pulled away. You see here? It's actually away, and so it becomes easy. The curvature of the blade, again, snags, which is exactly what the heck we're using. If I, again, use it here with the reverse grip, just because of the angle, the straight handle, we do the same technique. Now it catches, it's a little harder to snag. Watch, I'm just showing you. This is a little farther. You see this? If we look at the position here, this holds, locks, where I can now use the reverse grip. Okay? So now, we'll just cover a little bit. Number one is, the primary grip, palm fits into the handle. We have two fingers. This is the pit. The palm pushes against the back of the handle. The finger pulls. We have the pinch point. This gives us the strongest. Even if I use the thumb on the top, where other knives it's easier to disarm, the three fingers are actually holding because of the curvature, and the palm, as you see, it fits exactly into the hand like this. So this is our long range. Again, with the thumb on top, the fencer's grip, or the palm to the side. It has a natural point, just like a handgun. This actually has a nice point. The point is to point to your opponent, and that's what it is. If it's a straight one and I'm holding like here, I have to bend my hand more. That actually weakens the grip. This is why in fencing, many of the foils now have a palm where the palm fits against it and all this, because all the action is in the wrist, and that's exactly what this is made for. It has a natural fist movement, wrist movement, which is what we're using here, okay? This is long range. Long range, it puts more weight to the front for hacking, points the natural point to the front. The guard, because of the guard, deflects and can hit, or if I use the bottom guard, is to move where I can block, actually used as a block, where I can push my opponent's weapon off to the side or anything like this, and then continue the attack. In fighting, she actually comes back. That's to keep it. Here, at long range, he can block. When I bring it, it comes back into the palm here. It's now away from it. It's harder for him to block. And if he does, the palm, or the back of the blade, is called the false edge. In this case, the false edge is sharpened. That's intentional. So that now, if he tries to block, I have more cutting surface on the back. It does not go all the way back as a dagger. In this type of a knife, it's actually sharpened all the way to the back. It becomes more like a dagger. This was intentionally made not to be as a dagger. In other words, we have half the blade, the false edge is sharp. This also adds strength. The back of the blade, or the blade here, adds strength in all this. But I have enough where I can slash back. This is it. This is what we want. In other words, we're using only the tip of the blade if I'm going to slash. This also has what we call a Navarro hook. A Navarro hook at the blade, at the back of there's a slight little hook on this. This is intentional. The Navarro hook is used just like a fish hook, just like a snagging hook. It is used so that when I catch, it embeds. It actually, like a little fish hook, it actually starts to cut. In other words, it hooks into him, and then it what? Just like a fish hook, I can push and draw. A blade can be so sharp that you can be cut, just like a paper cut. A paper cut is a very sharp cut, and in many cases you're not even sure you're cut. With a Navarro hook, it's a little snag, you know you're cut. Just like everybody, when somebody gets snagged with a fish hook and it's pulled, they understand exactly what happens. Because of the little barb in there, it stings, it doesn't, and that's exactly what the Navarro hook is used for. The Navarro hook is to get the edge, hook your opponent, and then helps draw and make the wound larger. He now knows he's cut, he now knows that he's been snagged. And that's exactly what the Navarro hook is. Again, the purpose of this knife is combat. It can be used as a utility knife, as I said. We do have several grips. The difference is the grips are natural. The Largo Mono grip, fighting at long range, infighting, it doesn't drop, it just pulls back simply because of the finger grooves. It just moves in place, that's natural. If I want to, like I said, this I would never change in combat and then use it into the forward grip. I would never do that. That is specific. That grip is, again, for rear sentry taking or for whittling or anything else that we want to as a regular camp knife. This, I need a little bit more chopping. That's the fourth grip. In other words, the hacking. Or actually in combat, I can use the same thing to get me a little extra reach. So the knife with 4 grips for different distances. In combat, even though we prefer Largo Mono long range, your enemy might move in close. You might have to use it for close infighting. And that's the purpose and design of this knife. The beauty and excellence of this knife cannot be excelled. It is an Advincula Jim Hammond quality product. Thank you.
Jim, let's continue now with, if you would, pick up the Flesheater. We'll continue to give some more details about the evolution of this series. After the Flesheater 1 came about, we thought about the need for a smaller version, scaled down with a few other ideas that Jim wished to implement into the smaller size. This is the Flesheater 2. Jim, tell a little bit about it, how it compares to the 1. It has a 7 1/4 inch blade with a few design features unique to this particular knife.
Again, the handle is what dictates. The first thing is how we use in any combat situation, any type of knife fighting or defense maneuver in that, it's the design. The blade dictates how we use the handle and the blade dictates how we use the knife. This is exactly the same, or almost exactly the same, the design and the principles. Since it's a shorter blade now, shorter because some Marines or some military people might want a shorter knife. They believe that 9-inch blade is too long. We've shortened this more to the K-bar. The United States Marine Corps K-bar is approximately a 7-inch blade. And so we made a knife that's a little shorter, that people have used since 1942, 1943, when Marines were first given a K-bar type knife. So it's proved its way in combat for many a year. Just recently, the Marine Corps no longer issues a K-bar. They now have a bayonet knife that is designed. But this is based primarily on the type of a K-bar that most Marines have used for over 60, 70 years now. So we still have the Largo Mono grip. The palm, this is for using the length of the weapon we want to use. There's no wasted grip or anything. This gives us the reach that we want to have. The thing is, now, since it's a shorter blade, we're going to be a little bit more infighting. So what we've done with this design here is we've moved the guard back just a little bit more. If we look at the two, and we put them side by side, the regular Flesheater 1, the guard comes up about a 1/2 inch forward. This now goes back more. There's a reason for this. We now have a shorter blade. We now have a shorter knife. In this case here, if we were taking and using it to use it for rear neutralization of a sentry using a throat cut, this fits we have a large space that we can catch the neck and then the Navarro hook. This Navarro hook has now been extended even longer. So now, since the guard is in this position and we have a small guard, the guard goes back farther so that now if I use it, it doesn't impede, it doesn't stop. In other words, it will still fit the throat. And so we now have a longer Navarro hook, which is now embeds even greater. The thing is, now we can use the first grip is again for Largo Mono. It is used at the same way we use the other one. We're using the length, we're using the whole reach of the blade. For infighting, this actually fits in a little closer. Again, it's a shorter knife, and that's intentionally so that our guard actually hugs, moves in close for infighting like this, which gives us an outstanding grip. The front, the coil, is where you put the finger, and the other one was cut out. This no longer has a cutout, but it is not sharp, so we can actually put the finger across it again. What this does, in this type of a knife, again, it gives us increased strength, again, for rear sentry taking, or else for a camp knife or anything else where we're using it. It works very good like this. This actually is a proven design again. The Marine Corps had the K-bar was very similar to what this grip is. But again, the guard pulls forward, it pulls back. Now it even pulls back farther than the other knife, so that if somebody's hitting or blocking, okay, Pim, in slow motion, I don't want to destroy this knife here. But again, the angle of it, so if he's hitting like this, it even, watch, when he pushes hard, you can see this. Don't push too hard. But if you see, this is intentionally designed, and with this design here, it deflects his blade, and naturally this one would go forward. Again, that was the purpose of this knife. Again, since we have a shorter blade, and the cutting, the false edge is farther back, again, this is designed to reinforce where your palm doesn't hit the Navarro hook in this because of the thumb. And for reinforcing, this works again. So we still have the same grips. Again, since the knife is shorter, using it for a fourth grip, for extended reach, we have the same thing. Now we can move it and use it for hacking and everything else, and again for longer reach since we've shortened the grip. Again, this knife was made. In this case here, if we use as a reverse grip, this works just as good as the other Flesheater. So the reverse grip, this can be used, even though most people look at it and say it can't be used as a reverse grip. Again, at the angle of which I'm holding this, the reverse grip is actually outstanding for snagging, as you can see. This is exactly just the way that it's, in other words, it's not against the arm. It's away from the arm. This is used for snagging, for controlling, as you can see. So this can be used as a reverse grip also. And simply because we have the finger, you see the little finger is now locking in there, the second finger is locking. If you notice, the palm again fits exactly. The palm fits exactly in the palm groove, which it is designed for. But it was primarily made for a forward grip, and as you can see, the palm grip does the same. The thing is, the blade is 1.5 inches shorter for people that are in the air wing, pilots, people that are tankers, people like this. It's a shorter knife. It's a little bit easier to carry. So it has the same, again, the Navarro hook is now extended back farther, and that is intentional for hooking. Since we're infighting in that, there's more chances of actually using the Navarro hook because we are now closer to our opponent, and having a bigger type of a hook, like a fish hook, it snags a little bit better. That is the purpose of the Flesheater #2.
Jim mentioned also about the curvature of the lower edge of the knife, the recurve versus the straight.
Now recurve on both blades. The recurve is just what it implies. In other words, curving here and then it comes down. In other words, it's recurve. Kukri, many different blades. The more curved a blade is, the sharper it cuts. This is intentional again. In other words, if we're hitting with the tip of the blade, a draw cut. Draw cut is one of the most used techniques that we use. The purpose of the draw cut is when we hit with the front of the blade like here, it draws. But it's made so that it will not embed. But if I go deeper, because of the curvature, the recurve, it digs in more. And then because this protrudes, in other words, the sharp part, if it goes beyond like here, that will now embed. This is a different type of cut. This is what I technically call a head knocker 'em up or chop 'em offer. In other words, we want it to embed so that it doesn't. But in this case, we are really giving them a full blow. And as you see, the curvature of the blade will catch in. Since the weight of the blade is forward, we can get a very good strong cut. So again, it's designed for several things. If I hit with the tip, it's not to embed. If I hit farther, it is to embed. In other words, to catch the neck. If I don't hit them hard enough, again, the more curved the blade is, the deeper it cuts. This is why skinning knives are made with very heavy curves, so it can catch the skin of the animal and move it off to the side. So this is, another thing is, a recurved blade. If the blade is 1.5 inches wide, and it's a recurve, you actually make a larger wound. The entry wound will be larger simply because of the shape of the blade. In other words, 1.5 inches wide blade is actually making about 1.75 inch wound. The bigger the wound, the better. We always hear about, had it went a hair more, it would have killed somebody, or he would have died, or it would have cut an artery. That's exactly what it's made. In other words, it's the same thing with a bullet. In a bullet, we have hollow points to expand the wound. The only way we can do this without moving, twisting, or anything like this, is to have a recurve, which will make a larger wound. Again, that design was actually made intentionally. The kukri is like a recurve with the weight to the front. This has the same technique. So the recurve is an actually outstanding design. A lot of people say it's just for looks. Incorrect. It's making a larger. Again, there are many designs, there are many countries that use the recurve type knife. So it's an outstanding weapon in itself. Larger wound.
So in the evolution between the Flesheater 1, Flesheater 2, this year we've just come out. In fact, this is the initial prototype. It's not the version of which it will become. We're going to incorporate a recurve edge on this one also. This is one that Jim came to me to discuss, a more of an undercover size, a more concealable type piece that still incorporates all the design elements of the Flesheater. I'll let Jim talk about this one. This is the Flesheater 3.
If we look at all of the 3 designs here, the handles are all very similar. The difference with Flesheater 3 is we've removed the upper part because we're no longer using this. What we're using is we have the same handle, one grip. In other words, we have one grip only. Since this is an undercover knife, you're going to be, and it has to be small, it has to be concealable. It's also a little bit flatter so that it's easier to conceal on a person's body, regardless of how he carries it. But it retains, again, if you want to. Since many people like to put the thumb on the top, then you can use the top. In other words, we can put it, it fits exactly in, and it still has a Navarro hook on it, right here. The idea is we're not pushing with this. There's serrated edges that keep your hand from moving into the Navarro hook. Again, we have the same pinch points. There is no guard anymore. This is undercover. This is something that's concealable. The guard would put too much weight on the blade. It no longer serves a purpose. It's no longer used for blocking. It's no longer used for deflecting. It's something that an undercover police officer or a Marine or a military person in the field would have a secondary knife. And in cases, and we know this for a fact, that in many cases in combat, troops will carry more than one knife. They'll probably carry a larger knife, a smaller knife, and probably even a pocket knife. That is not uncommon even for the infantryman out in the field. So this is undercover. Again, it fits. There is no wasted handle. You can see that it fits exactly. It has a palm groove, which is intentionally to keep the hand from pushing and sliding. It has the 2-finger grooves. It has an outstanding pinch point. There's no way that somebody can catch it. It is entirely made so that it doesn't snag. In many cases, people will put a spike or something on the rear of the butt. This is intentionally left out. We don't fight with the butt. We don't fight. I've never fought. We never even try to use the butt. The point kills, the butt wounds. So it is intentional so that for close combat conditions, life and death situations, a police officer, undercover agent, if he had to use a small knife like this, you don't want anything to snag on your opponent's garment. You want nothing for him to catch or anything like this. So you have what? You have a very small concealable knife. Again, it has a Navarro hook so that when we are close, the Navarro hook will help embed, cut, tear, rip at close distance. So this is what this is. Again, you have a natural feel. It's not a straight handle. The handle comes slightly down, which is ergonomically the best type of a grip. And that's exactly what it is. It's a natural pointer. The point of the knife, when you're doing this, not going up or anything like this, the reason for the natural point is that this goes straight into, right in the heart, or the solar plex area is your primary target with this. So the blade naturally points, and that's what it is. Again, it's easy to, you see, as we can see. The way that this is also designed, that when I hit, again, against flesh, not against steel or anything else, when I hit against flesh like this, the hand will slide. There's nothing to snag, no guard. Remember, the larger ones, we use it to move it. In this case here, it's very close, so if we move, the blade just moves correctly, whatever we do. This is called a fillet. If I cut this way, I cut to the bone. If I cut this way, we fillet. We knock all that flesh off to the side. At the same time, this is what? Hitting bone, the flesh will move out to the side and have a larger wound, which is exactly what we're trying to do. Again, this was an undercover knife. It's straight to the point, has a natural feel, everything else. There's no wasted. The handle fits exactly. Now the beautiful thing about this is, and Jim Hammond has brought it and showed it to many people, every person that has grabbed it, whether they're small or large, automatically grabbed this thing and said, wow. And that's exactly what it is. In other words, it's maximum efficiency.
So that's the Flesheater 3. The next evolution in the series, which has been designed, and I'm still working on the design at this time, this is November of 2011, is turning, Jim said, turn this exact knife into a folder. So that's what I've done. This exact handle profile of the Flesheater 3 now incorporates a folder blade with this same general design, and that's the one we're working on at this point. Also, we've begun work on Flesheater 5, which is a bolo. We're going in the opposite direction now for the last one, incorporating Jim's influence and expertise in the area of the Filipino bolo, and that's Flesheater 5 will be the next one. So, full tang construction on all these fixed blades, which again I feel is the strongest construction method possible on a combat knife, utilizing a tapered tang to improve the balance, put the balance forward where it needs to be, and also improve the weight to make the strength to weight ratio as strong as it can be. And over the years, we've tried to perfect these knives to be as perfect a knife for those soldiers at the tip of the spear who need the ultimate combat weapon, and we feel we've achieved that with this series. Flesheater 1, Flesheater 2 is now in production at this time with Columbia River Knife and Tool. They'll be designated the FE9 and the FE7, with plans to pursue construction work in the following year on Flesheater 3 and 4 at this time. Before we close, I would like, a lot of my customers do come to me and talk to me about the difference between utilizing the reverse grip versus how Jim advocates the use of the Flesheater in the forward grip. Just like to do one concluding segment here with Jim and Pim to show the difference of why Jim advocates the forward grip versus the utilization of the reverse grip.
Okay. First, we'll use the same. We'll use the same. This is primary, so that we show that we both had the same length weapon and everything else. Okay. So now, if we're both standing at the position of attention, and we go here, and we're using it, and he's showing maximum reach. He's holding it with the butt all the way to here. In other words, he has, as we can see, he has a larger reach. And we'll turn the other way, just to give you an idea. So you can see, because we're front facing, there's no doubt who has the reach and everything like this. Now he'll use it as a reverse grip. In a reverse grip, we'll just say, no, stand straight again. If he's coming out here and he's trying to stab me like this is the farthest that he can go. Exaggerate as far as you can. And now it's actually a weak hold that he's using it, but you can see his design here. If I'm using this here now, in other words, I have no problem poking or hitting him where he's extending as far. In other words, he's actually lost his advantage. Had he held it in a forward grip like this, you can see how far I am from him. And so this, what he's done is he's taken away his advantage. As we can see in all fencing matches, all traditional fencing, the blade is pointing to your opponent. No fencer ever holds it with the blade pointing toward himself. If the reverse grip was so great, everybody would be using the reverse grip. At least a few people would be using it. Nobody in traditional fencing uses a reverse grip. It's not used in the days when they had cavalry. Nobody went out there with a reverse grip trying to slash the enemy or anything else. They've all held it in a traditional point forward type of a deal. But now we'll do this, and he's using a reverse grip. I do not teach the reverse grip per se. In other words, it's not my expertise, but I do understand. So I do teach my students how to combat the reverse grip and all that. Since we know that the point is pointing to the rear and he has to turn the angle, now trust me, if you know how to use a reverse grip like this, then we can do fantastic things. There's little, like I said, tricks of the trade that I would use. But here he's using what? He's pointing the blade back. He has to turn the angle of attack and everything else. It's also, and this is one of the worst things about the reverse grip, you now have a handle where I can now disarm him very easily. If I go here, now we'll just say that he closes the blade on me. This is actually a flesh wound. It would strictly be a flesh wound. It would cut only to the bone, and I'm using the bone against him. I'm snagging him simply because he has, you see what I mean? Simply because he's using it in a reverse grip. This is called a hammer grip, or ice pick. This is traditionally called in other words, the bad thing, this is the strongest blow that we can actually use, because you're coming down. The bad thing is that he has to go up. He has to go up, wake up call, to come down. When he's using this, when he makes a 1 and he's coming up, he's telegraphing the move, exposing the heart and everything else. So this is why we don't advocate. If he makes a slicing move to the side here, the same thing, you see? This, in theory, is supposed to be the advocates of the reverse grip. The advocates of the reverse grip, if he's punching her like this is supposed to, in theory, this is supposed to be able to block. All right? This is supposed to be able to snag, which it can do. The thing is, we can do the same thing here, you see? We can do the same thing with this. I can do the same thing. I can snag. I can do the same thing. The thing is, if he catches my hand like this, and he brings it around, he can't snag me. When he does this, very easy to snag. This is the bad thing about it. We've lost the reach. It leaves the weapon easy to snag and take out. He does the same thing with me. He does the same thing. He tries to catch. We have technique because we're using the wrist. No matter what he does like this, if I do the same thing and he catches my hand like this, it becomes a little harder for me to work. Now I understand, and I have a good person that uses the reverse grip will beat anybody that doesn't know how to use a blade. The thing is, all things being equal, a person that is using a reverse grip versus a person that uses a forward grip, the advantage is on the person with the grip that is pointing forward. The primary purpose of fencing is to thrust, to get into the internal organs. This does not allow it unless I'm very close. In other words, I have to be very close with the reverse grip. In this hand, which I advocate, largo mano, even if he tries to slash, you see here, it's very hard, even with his reach. It's a lot harder for him to move. like this. This here is easier, see, same thing, I can deflect, I can do everything in primary, the thrust. In other words, it goes. The reverse grip, again, versus the forward grip. Again, the only way that you're gonna ever find out is when two people actually go against each other. But this is one of the reasons. Largo mano is reach. Escrima, the word escrima, which I practice, means fencing. In fencing, traditional or otherwise, whether it's European or anything else, as a rule, the blade is pointing to the front. Only in the Japanese movies, Sato Ichi, the Blind Samurai and all that, do they use the exotic reverse grip. In actual combat, that is rare. In the movies, that's why it looks so exotic. This is why a lot of people like to use it. The blade is made with a point. The point is to get into the internal organs. The blade to the front works. Traditional fencing has used it for thousands of years and everything else. I rest my case.
Very good. Jim, I'd like to thank you for your time. Pim, thank you very much for working with us today. The trainer that Jim was using is the new trainer that's being produced by Columbia River Knife and Tool. This will accompany each of the FE9 and the FE7 that will be shipped out to folks that are purchasing it. This should be available early in 2012. I'd like to thank you. If you'd like to find more information on my custom knives, you can do so at jimhammondknives.com, and for Columbia River Knife and Tool at crkt.com. For more information, check our websites about these and other products in production. Thank you very much.